The Committee on Local Government, Pensions and Elections will come to order. Alex, will you take the roll?
Sure. Henderson.
Here.
Berger.
Here.
Quorum has been established. Just very briefly, I want to tell you a little bit. I will be the new chair of the Local Government Committee. Senator Black will be with appropriations, so I'll be doing that. It will be run pretty much the same way. What I do want to say is what we'll try to do is be respectful of everybody's time. We're going to let everybody who comes in have their ability to say what they need to. If we get on some bills where we're getting a lot of redundant testimony, we'll maybe try to pare that down if we're just saying the same things over and over. Hate to tell you that's especially with lobbyists. If we're just repeating the same one, we'll try to give the people who drove up here a little bit more time if we need to, too. So that's kind of how we're going to run it. And with that, we'll have our first bill, which is Senate Bill 975 by Senator Black. And Senator Black, whenever you're ready, please begin. Oh, committee members, I want you to know he'll be testifying on the substitute, and the substitute was sent out last week, and we have hard copies if you need them.
Thank you, Senator and committee. The original Senate Bill 975 is an ambulance district merging piece of legislation to allow ambulance districts a cleaner way. For sure in the area that I represent, some of us forget 10,000 square miles. Finding enough people to work in ambulance districts is becoming problems, let alone other things along with that. So we have some ambulance districts in my area that need to have this opportunity, and I think one or two critical needing this done. So let's look at that piece first. Current state law governing the process for two ambulance districts to merger is outdated and inefficient. It requires both districts to dissolve, remember that word, as corporate entities, for those of you that ever dealt with government, forcing the newly formed district to recreate all legal standings, agreements, and contracts. A process is time-consuming and costly. The dissolution of both districts also means an election of an entirely new board, potentially resulting in a complete turnover of leadership at a time when stability is critical. Therefore, the current law creates unnecessary confusion and uncertainty during the merger process. This legislation modernizes this merger process by allowing one ambulance district to retain its legal status, eliminating the need to obtain new Medicare, Medicaid, or private insurance billing numbers and contracts. It provides districts with flexible options for electing board members and shifts certain land annexation responsibilities from county officials to district boards. The act also requires the development of a consolidation plan and is presented to the public for comment. Under the legislation, consolidation may occur either through a citizen petition followed by a public vote or when districts have already achieved long-standing operational consolidation through a series of public meetings, board resolutions, and board votes. If the merging districts have different tax rates, a public vote is required to determine the tax rate for the newly combined district. And yes, I have read my legislation for those of you that wonder. And yes, I'm not a lawyer, so no, don't make me do a test on it, but I have read it and know what its purpose is, but experts behind me can go in it deeper. The substitute sent out with you added a piece of legislation from the chairman, and him as well as other people can do a better job of explaining that. But I do want to hit a talking point or two, or let the senator do that, whichever he would prefer on the new substitute. Let me go ahead and do it, or you want to?
If you want to, then I'll answer any questions anybody has on it. And I think we have some witnesses who can do a pretty good job on it.
Under current federal law, ground ambulance services are excluded from the No Surprise Act, leaving patients vulnerable to significant and unexpected balance bills after emergencies, and I promised people I wouldn't tell a story, but I would tell a story about how much it costs to get from Liberty to St. Luke's. It's a lot of money because my insurance quit paying. This proposal closes that gap by prohibiting surprise billing by ground ambulance services while ensuring fair and predictable reimbursement. Government-operated ambulance services would be paid at a publicly set rates approved by elected bodies, and hospital or privately owned services would be reimbursed at a reasonable cap of 325% of Medicare, a benchmark insurers already understand, and it helps providers recover the true cost of care. So that's the extent of what I know on that. And yes, after that point, I pulled the IVs out of my arm, never rode an ambulance again.
And I'm going to comment briefly on that last part you're doing. What we're really trying to do is, for rural areas especially, trying to make sure that we're going to have some of these ambulance districts going under, and ambulances aren't going to be there for some of those people because they're running into some issues. There'll be some people can testify more on that in a minute, but if anybody's got any questions on the committee on that part, I'd be happy to answer it too. Any questions from the committee for Senator Black? Seeing none. Anybody to testify in support? Please turn in your sheet and proceed when you're ready.
Members of the committee, my name is Brent Hemphill. I'm here on behalf of the Missouri Ambulance Association. The Ambulance Association is comprised of ambulance districts, a few fire protection districts, and hospital-based services. The underlying bill is a result of the ambulance districts in today's world who are struggling mightily to come up with revenue to pay for a $400,000 ambulance and pay for paramedics. We're trying to raise our level of quality and move towards an ALS system across the state. Now, if ALS stands for Advanced Life Support, which is a paramedic. A BLS is the trucks have EMTs on them. The purpose of the bill is when you have two adjoining ambulance districts that are both struggling, this allows for a seamless and agreed-to way to bring those two districts together. Case in point, you had Senator Black's district in Harrison County. You had both districts who went through some troubled times, came together, and the process was a complete nightmare to merge. The other is in Senator Berger's, and if you'll read the last paragraph of Senator Black's bill, we had Reynolds County that literally went one day and said, we're done running ambulance services. And so I got a call from the prior state rep from there and said, what do we do when the ambulance service ceases to run the ambulance service in Reynolds County? And so if you'll see that it says 5-year contract with them, they can go ahead and merge with the approval of the county commission. So all of these will be supported by the political subdivisions and the county commission as in support of it. If there is two districts that don't want to get along and don't want to merge, there is a section in here that allows initiative petition process so the voters can apply and bring these two districts together for the efficiency and hopefully a better outcome in healthcare. The second part is the balance billing provisions of the chairman. Just remember, ambulance services in Missouri are the lowest paid from commercial insurance in the United States except for Puerto Rico. We are getting crushed in our ability to be reimbursed for our usual and customary costs. I think 10 or 11 other states have passed this legislation. We're just trying to get our reimbursement costs to something appropriate. Medicare, you wonder why 325% of Medicare? Well, Medicare hasn't rebased their rates since the 90s. And so when you have a very low reimbursement rate and the basic, and you're going to hear from experts who deal with this on a daily basis, their cost to serve is a lot higher than Medicare is willing to reimburse. And so we're just asking for fairness in our reimbursement. And that is the substitute that includes the chairman's language. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Senator Berger.
I see several remarks in here about county commissions and county clerks. if the ambulance districts are combining, as in counties, let's say Stoddard and Scott County would combine their ambulance districts, who is the lead horse on that, or how does that work?
If they are, so ambulance districts have their own political subdivision. It would be the approval of those ambulance districts, board members. If there is no ambulance, then it would fall to the county commission.
I thought I saw in here where county clerk has to do,
Well, there's an election, so that's subject to, so that if it does go before the voters, then the county clerk would have to certify that election for the ballot.
okay, all right, thank you.
Any other, Senator Beck?
Yeah, just for reference, how many of these districts are financially in trouble? What do we see there?
We have about 6 that really need to probably look at other ways to coexist in this state. Very rural. Ambulance districts for your, you have fire protection districts in your area, city municipal fire that run EMS, and then you have hospital-based services. So ambulance districts are predominantly, the largest is by far St. Charles, but we have, Harrison County had 3 ambulance districts. There's no reason that Harrison County needs 3. So we can, and I'll kick it to my immediate past president, Kat Props. We have probably 6 to 7 that really need to figure out a different solution, and this is that way of streamlining that.
So I guess my second question would be, how many of these, how will the property taxes and the sales tax and all those things work in funding these districts?
Great question.
That vast majority of the money they get is from
Great
those.
question. So the bill outlines that if the two have differing, you have to accept the lowest amount. And then you go through the process. If you want to raise that, you have to go through a vote of the people to raise it. But if 2 districts come together and they have different rates, you have to accept the lowest rate.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else to testify in support? Please turn in your form and begin when you're ready.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to be here today. I'm Kat Probst. I'm the immediate past president for the Missouri Ambulance Association, as well as the chief for Adair County Ambulance District in northeast Missouri, so the Kirksville area, and not far off the Iowa border. So it was a few hours to get here this morning, which we never appreciate in the cold weather, right? So thank you for giving me the opportunity. Brent did a really amazing job in explaining the context of this bill. And we absolutely appreciate the support that we've seen and the understanding of why the factual piece of this are important. But what myself and my counterpart are here today to tell you is why this is important to the citizens that we serve. And so what we're really here to tell you is that we have served in this industry, myself for at least 20 years in the state of Missouri, and we've watched a steady decline in the ability of consistently being able to serve the communities that we are put in charge of. And what we want to do is see a service delivery model that's successful, that's growing, and that's changing patient outcomes. And as we continue to strive to be high medical utilizers that are doing it to the best economic ability, we have to be willing to change the legislation that was written initially for one reason, and now knowing that we're moving forward in our industry and in our culture and in our economics, we have to be willing to use that to our best advantage. So really the 2 things that these bills do that are extremely important as they come together is that it allows us to serve a broader population with the intent of doing it under the right taxing formation and right structure. If we go to a larger city, if we go to a St. Louis area, a St. Charles area, they have a lot of ability to serve a large population with a single overhead, and they'll put 20 or 30 or 40 ambulances on the road every day. My service can put 3 ambulances on the road every day. My neighboring services, so I have 6 counties that surround me, they put 1 ambulance on the road every single day. 1 ambulance for an entire geographical county. What happens when you have 1 call? That ambulance has to take the patient, or should take the patient, we hope, to an appropriate hospital. For us in Northeast Missouri, a level 1 facility for trauma, stroke, or STEMI is 95 miles away. I take one ambulance out of service to get appropriate care for 4 hours. So my neighboring counties are responsible to do the same thing. It is not at fault of the ambulance district. Everybody is surviving to the best of their abilities. We're not failing because of poor leadership. We're not failing because of poor tax structures. There's just not enough to go around anymore. So what we hope by these two bills is that we can serve better, and we want to be the lead on that. We want to put the rules in place. And so we hope that we can do that through this legislation. So I appreciate your support of it. We want, like I said, the other thing to consider when it comes to balance billing, sales tax, and your question in regard to sales tax is that when I have a Walmart in my Kirksville area and my ambulance district is based off of sales tax, the people that are accessing that Walmart and spending money on the Walmart are not just the citizens of Adair County. They're citizens of all of my surrounding county. So really, our money and our income is coming from all of these counties. So why can't we serve all of our counties with that? And that really helps us improve that overall model and not affect higher property taxes and things in that nature. Any questions?
Any questions for the witness? Seeing none. Thank you very much. Anybody else to testify in support? Turn in your form and begin when you're ready.
Good morning, committee members. I like to think that I'm a better paramedic than I'm a public speaker, so I will try to keep this brief. I am from Washington County, Missouri, and I also represent the Missouri EMS Association. So we are kind of the counterpart to Kat's team with the other state association. So I'm here to really tell you about the story in chairman and vice chairman's areas, and Washington County and Reynolds County and that partnership. To begin, EMS is really evolving. We're no longer just taking patients to the hospital. We are no longer just a source to get them to where the healthcare resources are. We are becoming healthcare, and especially in rural areas, we are a lot of times the only healthcare resource that is available to the members of our communities. In Reynolds County, we have one clinic that has one doctor and one nurse practitioner. They are not there 5 days a week. Any after hours during the week or on the weekends, one ambulance for 814 square miles is the only healthcare resource for that entire county. So whenever we talk about Representative Chris Dinkins, when she called and said, we don't know what to do. Reynolds County is turning in their keys today, and they want to know who they should turn them into. Unprecedented. No one really had great answers, so we got together that same day with people from Reynolds County. We met with their county commission. We held an emergency board meeting to elect a whole entire new board for Reynolds County Ambulance District. And 5 days later, we started supporting them with an ALS ambulance 24/7, 365. That was in 2022. We have had an ALS resource in that county every day since then. Prior to us being there, there was an ambulance with BLS providers, which is a lot lower level of care, 1 out of every 3 days. So if you think about it, when we only have one ambulance for the only healthcare resource in that county, and it's only there 1 out of 3 days, you can understand that that has an extreme negative impact on the members of those community. And I am very passionate about it. They deserve better in that community from us for healthcare resources. So through this process, we have identified, we have a lot of money that is being spent on 2 different board of directors. We have to now manage 2 different boards and support them with meetings on a regular basis. We have to audit. It is a state requirement that we audit both ambulance districts, even though one technically doesn't really exist for operations. So we're spending a lot of extra money by just having these 2 separate boards, when if we were just one organization, we would be able to spend those dollars on better equipment, being able to pay our paramedics, our EMTs better, lots of other things other than just things to keep an ambulance district alive. We've also started mobile integrated healthcare in those communities, so we have specially trained paramedics who are going out and doing more preventative care instead of responding when it's an emergency. So that is another healthcare resource that we were able to start providing by working together with other counties. That is really all that I have for you on our story. That is, of course, not just our area, but other areas around the state as well. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Any questions? Senator Nicola?
Thank you, sir, for your testimony. First, you're a great public speaker, so you have no concerns.
I appreciate it.
And this is probably a better question for Brent. Maybe we can talk about this later. But as I was listening to the testimonies, I represent a portion of Jackson County. And I know Independence, I actually did a ride-along. They have the fire department there has a very unique program that I was very interested in. And so I did a ride-along with that. So I'm just thinking through, I know this bill's really tailored for rural counties and that. So I'm just thinking through how this might potentially affect my county. So I don't know if you can speak to that or not. And like I said, Brent and I can talk about that.
I apologize. I'm not super familiar with your
That's okay.
geography there, but
Yeah.
if it is rural,
It's not.
okay.
Yeah.
If it's not,
We have very little rural in my
I
district.
think it probably just depends on your tax base and the revenue that they're pulling in from billing. But I know in rural areas or super rural areas, that's where this is going to have a very large impact at first. EMS, public safety, we're kind of a dying breed a little bit because we don't have the funding mechanisms to keep us thriving. So while I think it's affecting the rural areas now, I think it just depends on how your members of your community vote to support public safety.
Right.
In the future.
Okay. Well, thank you. I
I
appreciate it.
appreciate you doing a ride along too. That's
Yeah.
it's awesome to see people seeing what we do.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Anybody else to testify in support? And begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Senators. My name is Trent Ford. I'm a registered lobbyist with the Ambulance District Association, Missouri, here in support of this bill. I can't add anything to what Brent Hemphill or the two ambulance service people had to do, but maybe a little color. When Brent and I started in this building 30 plus years ago, in fact, I think Brent's been here longer than I have because he's older. But when we started, there were communities that had, in the Northeast, that had 3 ambulances for 600 square miles. This was not unusual in the rural areas. It has come, we were just, what I wanted to say was Chapter 190 was in its infancy at that time. And we're just trying to modernize some things. If we would have known we needed this back then, we would have been working on this in the 90s. But we didn't. It's brand new. And I think this particular bill would help out the ambulance districts very, very much. If you got any questions about anything.
Any questions from the committee? Thank you very much. Anybody else to testify in support? Going once. Anybody in opposition? Seeing none. Anybody for informational purposes only? And seeing none, Senator Black,
Thank you.
and you can just stay right where you're at. And the next bill we have is Senate Bill 976 with Senator Black.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Currently, if I'm sure all of you have looked over this bill, and it talks about people that work as lobbyists, advocates, being able to seek offices is what it's boiled down to. And it's around those rules that we put in that say you and I can or can't do anything and what they can do or not. Well, I do, in my time down here, I've seen people that serve in their roles that would be very good at serving in offices, positions in their local communities, et cetera, but there are things always that get in the way of doing that, and vice versa with us. As we leave this area with the knowledge we have, there may be boards and stuff that we can take advantage. So that's what we're trying to do, and Missouri Ethics Commission has been part of this as well. I'm pretty confident that the stuff that they brought in front of me is in the Senate Committee sub. But anyway, currently any person who registers as a lobbyist is required to dissolve any candidate committee the person has. This legislation allows any person who is registered as a lobbyist and also has a candidate committee to maintain that committee as long as that person is not lobbying the entity in which they are seeking the position. That's what the legislation will allow to happen. The Senate committee substitute clarifies that if someone lobbies for an entity and then desires to run for election to that entity, they can change their committee so long as they're never simultaneously registered to lobby and the entity when they run for election. So, like we make changes currently as, and I believe it's a good thing to allow good people to have this chance to do that. And, you know, many people look at us as, I tell people when I started this job at my old job, most people thought I was a nice guy. And then when I said I do in January 2017, I'm a corrupt, no good son of a gun now. So I just don't necessarily believe, I may be, but all of you up there I know are not.
Well, Senator Black, I can tell you, you haven't changed a bit since the first day we walked in here. So, anybody have any questions? Senator Nicola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not really sure about that comment you just made to my senator friend, but I'll think through that. And Senator, thanks for bringing this. I do have a question, and I just want to make sure I have this correct. So, a registered lobbyist, as long as they're lobbying, let's say on a state level, they can run for a municipal office, city office. So in theory, if they're elected to office, then they can serve in that capacity and still be a lobbyist, correct? They can function in both roles.
That is correct. And a current lobbyist, if they wouldn't have a candidate committee, they're a current lobbyist. So they can be both a lobbyist and on a board now. They have that ability now. But if somebody has a candidate committee and then decides they want to advocate for something, I'll use me as an example. This is not me. I'll be old or dead when I'm gone here, whether that happens this summer or 5 summers from now. If I decided to do something with ag education, et cetera, the FFA stuff that you know I care about, if I decided to do something where I received money and had to register a lobbyist to support that organization, and I still had my candidate committee at that time hadn't figured out what to do, then that would put me in conflict with law. And those are the things that I'm thinking that we do have people sitting here that as you learn and gain knowledge here, you can do a good job for your folks at home representing those, you know. I don't look at advocating for, when I taught this in school, and I said I wasn't going to tell stories, but when I taught this in school, you know, if somebody's opposed to your view, I would tell my students, you call them a lobbyist. If they're for your view, you call them an advocate, is what it is, and that's the mindset. And I'm trying to say that I could keep my candidate committee, again, cross my heart and will die. I'm not going to do this, but I could do that while I helped FFA or ag education on something when I dealt with state fairs, start school time, anything like that. I could advocate on that and not have to collapse it, and I don't think I would be causing myself to become more corrupt over that.
Yeah. What would be the reason why you would not want to shut down or cancel your campaign committee if you have no intention for running for office? And Obviously, I know it's very, very simple to start a campaign committee. It's very simple to register as a lobbyist. It's very simple to cancel both of those, restart. I've never been a lobbyist.
I don't think I'll have trouble making that decision on my personal own, myself, except for this part. As that money lays in there as we finish, I'm still going to have to make decisions what to do with that money that are legal. Help. I don't want you still be running. You may want part of my money.
I want all of your money,
Yeah.
Senator.
You're probably not
I
going to
just
get
wanna
it.
be
You're
very
probably not going to get any of
transparent.
it. But as I look at things like, you know that I care about ETMS, helping veterans and first responders. So if I decided that some of that money went there rather than writing checks back to the people that give it to me, it's going to take time for me, no faster than I talk, and remember people make fun of that, to make those decisions and what are the right decisions to be able to dispose of that.
Actually, since I've gotten to know you, I think you've been speeding up the way you talk. It seems pretty normal now.
Your
So-
influence.
So basically, just for clarity, keeping the campaign committee open because there's money in the bank account and deciding what to do with it. Is that really the main purpose for this? Okay, that's perfect. Thank you, Senator.
Any other questions for Senator Black? Senator Beck?
So I'm not sure how I feel about this exactly, and I know most candidates nowadays have a PAC, which is freer to do a lot of things with. Candidate committee is subject to a whole lot of different things you can't do. You could give it to charity, you could give it to another entity. In your case, you could give it to the Senate caucus if you wanted to. At the end of the day, you can do that. You can't give it to you can't give it to him, even though I know you guys committed fraud here just a second ago. But you can't give it to him from your candidate committee. And so, I guess a couple things yeah, the PAC can do, which I don't agree with either, but that's the system we're in, and we're not going to tie behind my back, so I have a PAC also. But I guess my couple of questions I have is, one, you mentioned that you can't lobby, so if you're a lobbyist, so this basically is for vast majority of the folks that are in this building when they leave here, they come out, they decide to lobby, and then they decide to run for, say, school board. Now you're lobbying the state, you're running for school board. However, everything is intertwined in so many different ways. As you know, probably 60% of the bills up here are education bills, and then anything that touches taxes on a local level those are all intertwined. So I guess my problem would be is, like, how do you lobby, and have the ability, and then have this candidate committee? It's kind of, I don't know if we can address that in this bill, but do you see what I'm saying? Either
No, Senator, same thing with me doing this. I do, everything you said is 100% accurate. I try to make it sound simple as possible, and it is simple, but the decisions you and the rest of the people up here and I make are not simple. They're intertwined and stuff, and as I put this forward, it's something that in your mind, and each one of your minds, you're going to have to decide, are the risks too great, or a simple guy like this senator not trying to increase risk of whether we can trust people and what they're doing. But yeah,
and I don't like to do this can't be about people, it has to be about policy, you know what I mean? Because there's people that would,
yeah,
does
but
it make sense?
that influences our thinking.
Yeah,
It's pretty hard at my
But
age
if you
to
do
not
policies
be.
based on a person, then you get in trouble. If you do
Oh.
policies based on a plan that is, can
Yeah,
go
we've been
forward
here
and work,
since
so that,
both showed up at the same time. Yeah,
so,
this is complicated.
yeah.
And I can't try to answer your question and saying what you're stating is not a concern. It is a concern.
it is, and not everybody's well-intentioned, and I'm not by any stretch of the imagination saying, and there's also people here that are going to walk away with, millions of dollars, in some of these campaigns, so, and I'm sure they want to keep that in some way, some fashion and form, and be able to do all these other things. So it's something I got to do. I do also know quite a few people that had to divest their money when they went into the lobby, and it's tough sometimes, but it's what has to be done. So I have to think about it a little bit. Thank you, Senator.
Senator Berger?
Senator Black, I wonder if a person could put their committee somehow on hold while they're doing that, so it would have no action. Would that be a possibility?
I want to tell you now, we could file limited activity. And
Right.
I don't know, I'm not close enough to the end to know how the different processes or different choices to do what you're asking. What is available currently within our ethics laws to be able to put these committees and shut them down. I just read where people do that, no
Yeah,
activity, limited
right.
activity.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Nicola.
Sorry, Senator, I had one more question. I think you mentioned, like, with the sub, maybe, that the MEC brought you this language, is that correct?
The MEC sent some language to me 2 or 3 months ago, maybe somebody's here. And that language I shared with staff, and I think that that's what the language job, and I shouldn't say that, right? But as I've discussed it with staff, I believe that's where that change come from, was
Okay.
MEC. And I didn't communicate back with them, which they probably think that's bad. I just gave it to my staff, said, look, find out about this and get this changed if it needs to be changed.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Senator Bratton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is a great start. I think I have more problem. I see the problem you're trying to address. I think I have more of a problem that our taxpayer dollars are paying for lobbyists to come down here and lobby against bills that we do. I mean, do you find that to be kind of egregious that we have the tax dollars you're paying to come and lobby against efforts that we do?
Senator Bratton, I'm one of those people because I think in many of your minds, if we pull my farm income, and part of the time there wasn't income, out of my total income in my house, I was given money or paid money to teach school. So I belong to the Missouri Vocational Ag Teachers Association and was their president. It was pretty common for me to donate $100 of what I considered my income once the school district wrote me my check over to our career tech education PAC. So therefore, I even sat on a group to decide who would receive that money and who wouldn't receive that money for donations. So in my mind, and you may be able to identify places where directly we write check A and that check goes directly into lobbying services. But my personal thought is once I was paid from school system and the school system received taxes from the state of Missouri, Fed, and local governments, right? But once that check was written to James R. Black and deposited in my account, that became my money to do with what I want.
I agree.
So as long as you can thread that needle where you're not telling me as an individual that I cannot, because even today, I donate to
That
Farm
wasn't
Bureau
really where
Found.
I was more like, when I was an auditor, where there's a line item in the budget going to an organization that is directly lobbying.
No, I haven't, yeah,
Or paying for
I
a
haven't
lobbyist.
I haven't seen that. So in an entity joining a organization that has lobbyists down here, that's what you're talking about. Like in-state government, we participate in, right?
Or
we
actually
write-
paying directly taking taxpayer dollars and paying a lobbyist to come down here.
So, state of Missouri, in the legislature, we pay NCSL dues, right? We pay two different organizational dues that we get to participate in their stuff. I don't know whether their people are considered lobbyists, but now, I didn't think of it the way that you're stating
Yeah.
it. Okay, I was thinking that, obviously, taking it personal that you were attacking me for my
No,
choices
that I
made
not at all.
in my
That's why I was
house.
saying I'm more like where you have line items in taxpayer
Okay.
dollars going to fund to come down here to combat, actually things that we do. That's where I find that to be really murky water and disingenuous with taxpayer dollars to be partisan. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Senator Black, thank you, and I know you probably have to get to something pretty important over there in a minute.
Somebody stand there looking at.
And anybody to testify in support? Seeing none. Anybody to testify against? Seeing none. Anybody for informational purposes? And that will conclude our hearing on Senate Bill 976. And our next one up will be Senate Bill 836 by Senator Crawford. Please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Sandy Crawford, District 28. Thanks for the opportunity to present Senate Bill 836 to you this morning. This bill does several things. We had a very similar bill to this one last year. There are a few changes. There's one thing that came out of last year's bill and a couple things are going in. So let me just start. I'll just run through a list. There's several things. Again, first of all, the bill reinstates the presidential preferential primary, and it also sets it to the first Tuesday in March, so that's a change of date. The bill modernizes the process of elections so that entities can electronically send notices of elections to the local election authority's office instead of having to mail, fax, or bring them in person. Senate Bill 836 moves the April election filing deadline 1 week earlier so it will not conflict with major holidays. We've had that trouble I think we're getting ready to have that trouble here coming up, so we need to change that date so there's not any question. In addition, the bill expands the time frame for the local election authorities to test voting equipment. I think now they have to do it within 14 days. This will expand that time. If you can imagine, let's just say there was some kind of a problem with that voting equipment, you may need more time to get it fixed. So I think that makes sense to give them a little more time to do that. The bill also expands the in-person, no-excuse absentee voting from 2 weeks to 4 weeks. I know in our last presidential election, many people on both sides of the aisle took advantage of that, and so we would like to expand that from 2 to 4 weeks. The next thing it does is currently military and overseas voters can show up on election day at a polling place to vote, even if they have not registered before in advance. This bill will still allow them to do this, but it requires them to go to the local election authority's office to do that, because we want to make sure, your election workers may not know all the specific details on how to do that. I think it's important to note that this piece of legislation that required or allowed them to do this in the first place, I think it started like in 2014, and it was a plus for our veterans. That's why it was originally put in, is my understanding. The next thing it does, ensures that the confidentiality of our permanently disabled absentee voter list, it protects that confidentiality. Campaigns and candidates would still be able to receive that list, but it just protects, as you can imagine, if somebody wanted to do something nefarious, they could get that list and go after some of our vulnerable populations. So I think that's a good thing. The bill also fixes an inconsistency in the law where voters can cast a provisional ballot on all elections. Currently, it just allows them to do it on certain elections. The next thing it does is it allows all write-in candidates, it requires all write-in candidates to file a declaration of intent before the voting takes place. And I think I mentioned last year, this happened in my county. We didn't have somebody run for a surveyor, and so there were literally hundreds of people names were written in, and that causes a huge problem for our election authority. So we're not saying at all that we can't have write-in candidates, but you have to file that declaration. If you want to be a write-in candidate, you have to file that. And that will keep us from having to count votes for like Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, things like that aren't legitimate. So anyway, I think that's a very good thing. Also, Senator Black, last year you had asked to put the electioneering distance from 25 to 50 feet. I think I originally told you it was not in the bill, but we did put that in this original bill. So it's already there. And then the last thing I want to make mention of is Senator Nicola, I think you had an issue with the election worker protection last year, and that is not in this bill. with that, I'll be happy to answer questions. I do have a couple of really good witnesses behind me that are local election authorities, and they can probably answer you better than I can on why some of these things are so important, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Senator, I just wanted to make a statement. In my area, I've heard more things about the no excuse absentee ballot. We're getting bigger turnouts. We're getting more people that are voting. I want more participation. I want as many people to vote as they can. I want to make it as easy because people nowadays are into easy. We got our phones, we got all of our stuff, the way to do it, and making it where they can go in there without telling a lie that I'm going to be out of town next week, so they can go ahead and vote, and extending that gets more people a chance to vote, and I really like that. And the part about the write-in, we kind of had that in our area too, and a bunch of them got together and they got some funky name that ended up winning the write-in, that's not what our elections were intended for. So.
Right. One of the other things that we have two people with the same name, and so how do you know? That name was written in. Well, there are two different people in that area, in our area, that have the very same name. So who's to determine which one they meant? So.
Elections are supposed to be important. They're supposed to, be conducted a certain way, and I like that. Any other questions, Senator Bratton?
Thank you for bringing the bill. I definitely think we have to continue to bolster protections for our elections, and I agree with a lot of this. Now, the absentee, I think we need to take a different approach, in my opinion. I think we need to make it not only just like election day to be a holiday for state and federal, make it to where people know this is the day you go to the polls, and make sure there's no excuse for them not to be able to go to the polls, which at work is probably the biggest contributor to why people say they can't. Instead of extending election day in perpetuity, way out, as we know how we see campaigns unfold, a lot of times, things come to light right at the last minute. And we know of a laptop that was brought up in a presidential election that would have absolutely turned the tide, and they know that polling would have showed that. But there were numerous people prior to that cast their vote, and then that came to light, and they said that absolutely would have changed their outlook and how they would have voted. So I think it's potentially to the detriment of things that do come out and before you cast that vote. So I just caution expanding, an election that should be one day as opposed to making it into a months-long process. So that's just what again, I agree with it, but your concept, the no excuse, being able to have to show an ID for a short amount of time, but at the same time, I just don't want to extend it in perpetuity. Thank you.
Senator Berger.
The presidential primary preference vote, does it have any meaning?
I think that depends on who you ask. I'll be very honest, I'm not a huge fan of putting it back in, but there seem to be a lot of people that do want it. One of the things that I did hear that I thought was legitimate, if we don't have the presidential preferential primary, there's no way for military overseas to input to have any kind of a voice in the process, which I had not thought about before. It's states right in the name that it's a preferential, and so.
With our budget concerns we have in the state of Missouri right
it's
now,
very costly.
I think it's $9 million.
I think you're right.
Okay. And what about local costs? Would there be local cost on top of that $9 million? Is that just the state of Missouri's money?
I believe the bill specifies that the state's going to have to pay for that.
I think it specifies they may pay them back. Am I right?
They're supposed to.
May or should or shall? I thought it was may. Because we look at the $9 million and then we look at the local cost, and it has no meaning. Why do we have it? Why would we even want to have it?
I'm not a big fan. However, sometimes I'm not totally opposed to it. Put it that way. But there's some certain people want it, and so we'll just see how this goes.
I think they took it out.
There's always give and take in bills. Put it that way.
I think they took it out in the House version.
I believe they did earlier when they voted out a committee. I think they All right, you're correct. I heard that as well. They took it out, the House version. However, I do believe they're going to run that as a separate bill on a standalone bill as well to kind of give it its day in court, so to speak, as well.
And to kind of address Senator Bratton's comments, I'm not for a holiday for people to vote at all. If you look at the cost for companies, loss of time and everything else, I'm okay with just the 2 weeks staying how we had it previous. I think if you have it 2 weeks, people have ample time to get there in a 2 week period. I don't think we should extend it to 4. I just think it gets to be so great, and even the work that it involves in the county clerk's office, I think is monumental.
One of the things that, and she's here, so I don't want to steal her thunder, but one of my county clerks, the county is a population of 30-some thousand. They had almost 4,000 people vote early, almost 4,000 in the 2 weeks. That was a big burden too, and I think part of the thought is if we give them 4 weeks, that will allow that maybe spread that out some for their offices as well.
I think that may be true, but I agree with him on his part of it. Things happen days before elections that may change people's minds on how they vote. You know, if we go to 1 month and all of a sudden next year we need to go to 2 months and next year we need to go to 3 and then it just gets out of control. I think we have more control staying at the 2 week period. No holiday whatsoever to vote.
Your
None.
points are well taken.
Thank you.
Senator Bratton.
Sorry. So with the extending this, is this every single election or is this just presidential?
You know what? Would you ask that question to my experts behind me?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't remember it. The honest answer is I don't remember.
Senator Nicola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and you actually answered a couple of my questions, so I won't belabor the point, but I don't prefer going back to a presidential primary for a couple different reasons. One, like Senator Berger said, it doesn't really make any difference, and it costs a lot of money. And I think the caucus is a way that the party itself can really participate, since we're an open primary state anyway, and we have cross parties voting in the primaries. As far as expanding early voting to 4 weeks, I would really be against that. I'm sorry, I forgot to thank you for not putting the other part in there of the election work.
Maybe you should have led with that, right?
Yeah, I know, right? Maybe I should be
Make
happy
me
and
feel
keep my
good
mouth
before
shut.
you make me feel bad.
But thank you very much for doing that, because I was anticipating that this year. So here's a couple things that I saw. Number one, I think one of the reasons why we had a huge turnout is Trump was on the ballot and people were really upset. In my county, Eastern Jackson County, it's a large population. We only had 2 locations. They had trouble filling them, finding a location, having to pay for the location, having to get workers at different locations. We had lines backed up, and it was difficult for me being a candidate. That's a whole nother issue, because you have to campaign differently when there's 2 weeks of an election. And I'm now, because this is being presented as 4 weeks, we're like on a slippery slope. Like, where are we going, to a 2 month? I mean, we have an election season now. We don't have an election day any longer. And
Well, I think I would say one thing. We would be limited somewhat because of ballots getting printed and things like that. So you're only going to be able to go out to a certain point. So there is that.
And personally, I think 2 weeks is too long. And there's a lot of problems with it that I have witnessed. And what Senator Bratton said, with information coming out, you know, even as candidates, looking at not only from a voter perspective, and I think one of the things we're doing is we're making a lot of things way too easy for people, and way too convenient. We've had an election day for decades and decades. It's just, that's the way it's been. And now we're expanding this, and it's costing more money. We have to have more locations. We have to pay the election workers, you know, to be there. And again, I think one of the reasons why we had such a great turnout is because people were very upset. Trump was on the ballot, and I had people at my polling location for 4 hours in the rain waiting to vote early, and it was nonstop. But do we make these kind of changes just to make it more inconvenient for people? Because when do we stop? When do we stop making it more and more convenient? Because the more we supply these types of things to make it convenient, well, then we have to, a few years down the road, we have to do it again. Just like we have 2 weeks, now let's do 4. You see what I'm saying? So I have a little bit of problem with that. I wanted to ask you a question about the 25 to 50 feet. I will agree that when I go to vote, I don't like being attacked by all these people that are at the polls, and you have to kind of squeeze. I think when I campaigned, I didn't try to attack every person that came in. I was just there with my shirt on. Hey, I'm here to answer questions. Have a great day. Thanks for coming and voting. But a lot aren't like that, and you can see it in people's faces when they come in. I think we need to maybe make some changes there on how candidates and even people for ballot questions, how they're handling themselves, because I think a lot of people don't like that, and they don't even want to go to vote because they know they're going to, and I've had that, a lot of people tell me that. But there's a lot of polling places that 25 feet, we're already at the edge of the sidewalk. 50 feet is going to put us in the parking lot. So I'm not really sure this is going to actually be practical, or is the point to just kind of get people away and not even show up because it's so far away from the door?
I can tell you in one instance, one of my counties in the last election, the voting place was at a church, and there were people on the sidewalk disrupting. Let's just call it that, disrupting. And so the people in the church did not want that happening, and but the problem was the sidewalk's public, and there was nothing that anybody could do, and so they couldn't really stop it. So that became a problem. If it's a little further back, maybe that wouldn't be the problem. And again, Senator Beck had requested this go on last year too, so maybe you two could talk offline about that.
Okay.
That as well. And he has his specific reasons for wanting it, and maybe he can speak to that as well.
And just to, we can do here. So my reason was, one, it causes a lot of stress at the polling places on our election workers and some other things.
It does.
And I believe I had the ability, and I haven't looked through the rest of it, but the candidate, I think we gave them the ability, the candidate themselves, to be able to go into that 25-foot range. However, everybody else, all these other ballot issues and everything else where they keep those folks away, because people get really frustrated, and you're right. I mean, there's a lot of problems there with, people can be agitators, and at least if they're 50 feet away, it's a little bit better,
Right.
To some extent.
Yeah.
And I understand what you're saying in some of the areas with the parking lots, but I think we can work it out to where, but again, I think the candidate should have that ability, the candidate themselves, that's
Right.
it, within that range, so.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm going to real quick on here, but we got to get to the witnesses. But I'm going to say I've actually, my first election I ever had, I'd kind of dealt with this situation where we had a minister who came up and was talking with the people who were there, campaigning for it, and said that he had prayed with his flock the night before, and one guy cussed him out and threatened him at that point. And I'm going to get on a fight on election day. This isn't good, but I can't let this go on. So we had to go get him. So sometimes you do end up in some situations like this. Now, luckily, that candidate didn't endorse him doing that, and he sent some people over and they took him away and got him out of there. But you do end up in some pretty touchy situations occasionally.
And if we're just having open discussion, I mean, there are several states that they don't allow signs. They don't even allow this at their polling places. And I think maybe there'd be some faux outrage from some campaigns, but at the same time, people would be kind of relieved they're not having to go like crazy, with their hair on fire the night before, putting their signs out at polling locations and all this, where you have to strategize where you're going to put your signs, and then, you wouldn't have to do that, and you just allow people to go vote. So, even that is an option. Just, hey, we're just not going to do this. No signs, no anything. People are going to go vote at this particular time. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
How about just signs? No people, just signs.
Hey, well, I mean, that's fine.
We're making a deal right here. Is that okay, Senator, on your bill?
Okay, I think we've got that. Let's go on. Anybody testify in support, please come forward. And if you've got a form, please turn it in.
There we go. Well, Mr. Chairman, Senators, my name is Eric Fay. I am Director of Elections in St. Louis County, Missouri. With me is Rachel Lightfoot. She's a Polk County Clerk. I'm past president of the County Clerks Association, Rachel's current treasurer association. We will be as brief as possible. We want to thank Senator Crawford for introducing this legislation. She laid out all the points, I think, very well. Just to hit on a few things, the filing deadline is kind of for the April elections. Moving that is kind of critical because next year we're going to have a filing deadline on Christmas come up, so it's important to get that fixed. Moving from 2 weeks to 4 weeks for the in-person, no excuse. In our opinion, that's responding to what the voters have told us they want. People are voting with their feet, and in St. Louis County, we had a little over half the voters vote prior to Election Day, which was a first ever. And, you know, in a lot of the rural areas in the county courthouses, there is just not room to accommodate all those voters, so spreading it out a little bit. Currently, just as a reminder, absentee voting begins 6 weeks before every election. That's been the law for decades, and it's just kind of frustrating for voters. They come to our office 3 weeks before, and we ask, well, why are you voting absentee? They say, well, I want to get it out of the way. So and they say, so I got to lie to you to vote today. So, yeah, till next week. So again, that's just a response to what we've seen from voters. The provisional issue. So right now, voters that show up with no photo ID, they can vote a provisional ballot. That's in place for every election. It's just the statewide and federal elections, there's an additional type of provisional ballot for voters that don't appear on the list when they show up to vote. The election judges get very confused by this quite often, so having both types of provisional ballots available at every election just makes the process a little bit more understandable for everybody. The issue Senator Crawford mentioned about military voters, it was put in place long before my tenure that to accommodate voters that were recently discharged or perhaps voters that were recently assigned to, say, Whiteman Air Force Base or Fort Leonard Wood, that they arrive after the voter registration deadline, they can show up at a polling place on Election Day, not being a registered voter, fill out a registration form, and vote a limited ballot. We as county clerks and election authorities don't wish to take that away. We just wish for it to happen at the courthouse, at the office of the election authority, for that very narrow set of voters that find themselves in that situation. But for election judges that are doing a whole bunch of other things to all of a sudden have to deal with this very unique circumstance is very difficult. That's a separate ballot that has to be generated. The writing candidate issue, Senator Crawford laid that out very well. I won't add to that. And finally, the 50-foot electioneering issue. That is a huge issue for us in St. Louis County. Every election, it takes an inordinate amount of law enforcement resources to enforce that 25-foot law. We have fights, we have arguments every election, especially in municipal elections. That's where it's the worst by far. And I will say, I just want to point out, Missouri is so far out of step with the rest of the country. I know we get used to things. We're used to this 25 feet in Missouri. We have the second closest electioneering distance of any state in the country. I think 22 states have 100 feet. Federal courts recently, in the last few years, upheld a 200-foot electioneering distance in Wyoming. So I think Senator Bratton put it very well. I've never met a voter that said to us, oh, I'm glad these folks are here electioneering at the polling place. It seems to only be elected officials that really desire that. Voters seem not to. And again, we have police, especially on municipal elections in St. Louis County, chasing this around all day, breaking up fights. Voters really do not like it. I'm going to stop there. I don't know if Rachel wants to add anything.
I'll add on the 50-foot thing. I'm a small county, so polling places are hard to find, especially that meet all the requirements that we're supposed to be meeting. In 22, I had an issue with this, and it was at a church, and I almost lost that polling location. If I, in certain areas, lose the polling locations I have nowhere to go with those. I do have some that are very remote and very rural, and there's no other building for me to put a polling location at. And that means moving voters, even further away from a polling location. So if 50 feet it helps me maintain my polling locations as well.
Oh, did you fill out a form? Okay, you'll do that. Any I think there's the two of us. Joe, you got a question?
Just maybe a comment. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not really sure if 50 feet's going to solve this problem. I think it's a people problem to begin with. I know myself, I've gained a ton of votes just because I was standing there. I've had people tell me, thank you for being here. You've got my vote. I think that's a horrible way to vote for somebody, quite frankly. But I do think it's another opportunity for candidates to be in the public. I think some candidates go way too far, and they're too pushy. And I've seen all the stories. You know, some of the things that the chairman said. I've seen it. I've seen the arguments and the whole thing. So maybe we need to really take a look at changing a lot of it. I mean, you know, if we weren't going to have anybody there and just have signs up, or I just don't think the 50-foot is actually going to really change a whole lot in that respect. The other thing about polling places, I've heard the same problem is happening in my county, in eastern Jackson County, because of some of these things that are happening, and churches aren't. I pastor a church, and I offered the church to our election board. I said, look, if you need another location in that district, let me know. I'll open it up. But because I know that is hard, that's difficult too, which also plays into extending this 4-week no excuse voting, because in my county they were having a hard time finding locations, paying for the locations, and finding the workers for those locations and paying them too, because now we're going to stretch it out. We have to have election workers for 4 weeks instead of 2 weeks. Anyway, I just see a lot of problems with some of this, and I think there might be some better ways to solve some of our problems, other than just expanding it to 50 feet or.
We'd be happy to go to 100 or 200 feet, Senator, if you think that might be better.
I don't think, well, no, 100 or 200, I don't even think that's reasonable, to be quite honest. I don't really care what other states are doing that way, because I don't think that's a reasonable thing. But if it's a people problem, then maybe the way we're doing it needs to change, not the distance, but the people that are there. Because it's not only candidates, obviously. We have people that are getting signatures and ballot things, and some of these people are very, very aggressive. They are.
Yes.
They're right in people's face. They
Yes.
won't let people pass without getting in their face.
Yes.
And maybe we need to look at that, how that is actually taking place, and prohibit some of that. Just have a station there if somebody wants to come. When I go vote, I don't like it. I don't like all these candidates coming at me. And I basically do this. But if there's somebody I want to talk to, because now I have the opportunity to talk to them in person, I'll approach them. And I think if we and that's happened to me as a candidate, because I'm not pushy at the polling places because I don't like it. I stand there, I have palm cards, I stand a little bit of a way, I make sure they have plenty of room to walk, but they know I'm there. I've got my campaign t-shirt on. If they want to talk to me, and I just say, hey, thanks for coming and voting. But I think if we limit this, because one of the problems we have too is that the citizens, the voters, have very little face-to-face contact with their candidates. And this is just giving another opportunity. And quite frankly, one of my I'll just give you a campaign strategy that I use, is I put my signs out at polling locations, even in elections I'm not in. Because that's more name recognition, right? So I think signs work. That's why I mentioned to the senator, if we're having a people problem here, then maybe we just put signs out. And there's no people there.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd like that, but I think we can strategize this and come to some kind of a compromise here of our behavior at the poll.
Sure.
Blocking people's way into it,
Yeah.
other than just I'm just not sure 50 feet's going to solve this problem. That's really what I'm looking
Well,
for.
Senator, if you think there is a way to kind of legislate the behavior piece, we're very open to hearing you out.
Yeah, I bet you are. Thank you.
And I'm going to say that I agree that I would love it if we could do signs and not people, because I've never heard anybody say, I'm so glad those people are there and they're approaching me. Same thing. Thank you. Anybody else to testify in support?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Senator Nicola. For the record, my name is Tyler Travers, registered lobbyist here today on behalf of the ACLU of Missouri in support of this bill. We want to thank Senator Crawford for bringing it forward. There's been concerns expressed across the dais that aren't without merit, but the ACLU does believe that extending the 2-week period is a good thing. As Senator Henderson mentioned, just participation is the bottom line of what the ACLU cares about. And I'd be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else to testify in support? Please come forward. Turn in your sheet, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I am Kelvin Simmons, and I am the contract lobbyist for the Health Forward Foundation. We are here in support of Senate Bill 836. I'd like to thank the senator for her leadership here. We would say to you that the Health Forward Foundation is basically a public health foundation focusing on healthcare access and outcomes. We actually believe that this is a very good thing. We are very much supportive of the absentee voting and moving it from the 2 weeks to the 4 weeks, and we think that that is good for people being able to participate with their democracy. If you ask how is healthcare and voting coming together, well, we'd like to tell you the National Medical Association, the American Medical Association have both deemed voting and access rights as a determinant for a person's ability to lead a healthy life. So we just would like to go on record in support, and again, thank you, Senator, for your leadership.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else in support? Please come forward.
Morning, Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Laura Holloway. I'm the Executive Director of the Missouri Municipal League, and we are in support of this bill. I want to thank the Senator for bringing it forward. Specifically, the candidate filing dates is something that was an unintended consequence from a few years ago. It's had support over the last few years. It's been non-controversial as it's been brought forward, and so we would just like to see that portion. I mean, we support the bill, but that's an area that we really want to see move forward.
Any questions? Thank you very much. Anybody else in support?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Alex Eaton representing Responsive Government Action this morning. Want to go on record in support of Senate Bill 836. Appreciate Senator Crawford bringing this forward, specifically the expanded no excuse in-person absentee voting. The voting equipment testing pieces are the pieces we care about. So appreciate going forward. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next person in support.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Mike Bruns on behalf of the City of St. Peters in support of the bill, specifically the part that addresses filing deadlines falling on a holiday. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Next person in support. Please turn in your sheet and
Good morning.
proceed.
Steve Allers with the Missouri Association of Counties, in support of the legislation and in support of our clerks who do such a fine job maintaining the integrity of our elections.
Any question? Thank you, sir. Anybody else in support?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Connor Lubert testifying on behalf of the Missouri Voter Protection Coalition. We'd like to go on record in support of this legislation. We want to thank the senator for bringing it forward. We have a prepared statement from our executive director, Denise Lieberman, so I'll be very brief. We are very much in support of the expansion of the no excuse absentee voting, as well as the expansion of the provisional ballot, And we also very much support requiring the permanent disability absentee voter list to be confidential and not publicly disclosed. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Next person in support. Seeing none. Anybody in opposition, please come forward. Turn in your sheet and proceed, please.
Lisa Panett with Armor Vine. There are 3 major points that we're against in this bill. The presidential primary, it just gives people a sense that they have a say that they really don't have a say in because it does nothing. Taking the absentee voting from 2 weeks to 4 weeks, we would agree with Senator Bratton with saying that that probably should be decreased and not increased. As far as the electioneering being expanded to 50 feet from 25 feet, we would also be opposed to that. And I would say that I will give you a personal example as someone who has gone out many, many times in St. Louis County and dealt at the election polls with that issue. I, too, had someone that cussed me out. It was a person that was coming in. So I was standing there giving out information. They didn't like who I was giving out for. So they cussed me out. They went in, they voted, they came back out, and they cussed me out again. And at that point, I started to witness to them. And I'll tell you that they left as a follower of Jesus Christ that did not go in. So let me just tell you, there are positives for people that receive information, everything else, and are there some people that are out of control of these polls? Absolutely. But somehow we need to determine how we're going to modify that behavior of people that are at the polls and not deter people from working at the polls.
Any questions? Thank you very much. Anybody else in opposition? Seeing none. Anybody for informational purposes? Seeing none. Senator Crawford.
I think we've said enough.
Okay. And at this point, I make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Second. And the committee is adjourned.